It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Grind Line here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, I'm joined in by my line mates, Sabourin and Devin Little. Evan, how's it going? We got a Red Wings win. They just won in overtime. Lucas Raymond with the snipe to win it, as you can see by your background there. How's it going?
Oh man, we needed that one, huh? What a snipe that was too, right through the legs. Oh, yeah, he hasn't been scoring much lately, so that was good to see. And another game where we gotta stop recording on Fridays, man. I'm too emotional. It's the game just ended. I got so many thoughts. The game was back and forth, and just, anyway, how are you doing, Devin?
I'm right there with you, man. Right there with you. Yeah. It's always fun when we get to record coming off a game, right? Especially a game like that where, yeah, like you said, it's back and forth. What was it, a week or two ago where you had the roller coaster background? That's what tonight's game was. It was a roller coaster. And luckily this one had a good ending, as opposed to other nights over the last week or so.
Yeah, I mean, it was another high-scoring game, 5-4. And yeah, like back and forth, it was tied multiple times throughout the game. So they're still allowing too many goals, and that's a problem. And it's been a problem for the last, 10 or so games, and probably throughout the season. They've just been allowing way too much, or scoring goals, but still allowing a lot. And we'll talk about that again on this episode. It's been a common theme as we go through. But before we get on to the show, got to remind you of the Substack that we have here at the Hockey Writers. It's been revamped. We've now have access to all the teams, not just the Red Wings, but check that out. You get the free version. You can get articles 3 times a week. Also have a premium option, which gets you a lot of different things: game day previews, special articles, prospect updates, and of course access to all the teams as well. You're not just getting the Red Wings. You can get prospects, hockey history, tons of other stuff. So check that out in the link below. All right, well, let's get into the show and start talking about our one good, one bad, and could be focused on this game or could be focused on the week that was. But we'll start with you, Devin, a good and a bad from this past week.
Well, one good has got to be Alex DeBrincat getting a Gordie Howe hat trick in tonight's game against the Predators. A small guy like that, small guy who's known for scoring goals. He's a little feisty guy, isn't he? I kind of joked on social media that that cat's got some claws. He dropped the gloves with Roman Josi, and he dropped him. That was a real good spirited effort by DeBrincat there. It was a lot of fun to watch. And obviously seen him do what he does best, score goals, and then he got an assist on Jake Wallman's goal in the third period there. So great effort by DeBrincat in tonight's game. Love seeing him find different ways to electrify the crowd, and that's exactly what he did. And then one bad, honestly, has just got to be just kind of harping on it. Overall defense, they did win, but they still allowed 4 goals. Can't be doing that. The previous game, they allowed 6 goals against the Minnesota Wild, so that's 10 goals their last 2 games. We can kind of extrapolate this over the last 2 weeks, and it looks worse and worse the more games you include. It's very uncommon now for the Red Wings to allow less than 3 goals, and that's kind of goes back to what I was saying last week, where sooner or later they're going to start playing playoff types of games, and those games aren't typically 6-5, 5-4. Those are typically 2-1, 3-2. So, yeah, good to see a win, but they still have some work to do when it comes to keeping the puck out of their own net.
Yeah, a lot of work to do. They are in the bottom half of the league, allowing 3.4 goals against per game. Scoring 3.51, but it's like you can't be around the same for both goals for and goals against. So yeah, it's a problem, and definitely has to change. We'll see if it changes. I don't know. It's been a trend for sure this season. And Evan, how good and a bad from this past week here?
Well, my good is, and I'm going to age myself here, is Mickey Redmond turned 76 on Wednesday, I believe, the 27th. I've watched Mickey since I started watching hockey for the Red Wings, and the fact that I'm getting up there in age, and he's still kicking it here is it's something I really appreciate because he'll always be the voice of the Red Wings for me. Him and Dave Strader, because those are my first memories. But yeah, I'm really happy to see he's still doing good and looks well, and yeah. My bad would be, I mean, tonight again, these mental breakdowns on defense are just destroying this team, and it keeps happening and happening and happening. Tonight, the first goal, Petrie gets caught chasing behind the net, leaving Forsberg wide open. There's no goalie on earth that was going to save that shot. And then you had Wallman and Mata playing I don't know what behind the net there that led to another Forsberg goal. And then you had on the power play and on an odd man rush, you have Comfort dumping it back to the point to hit Ghostus Bear, which turns over, and our old buddy Nyquist puts it. It was just, it's so frustrating to see these mental errors. And the other thing, too, that I didn't really like, that Minnesota game was horrible. The Red Wings got pushed around. And the physicality of this team really has to improve. When you look around the team, there's not a lot of big guys. We went outside Costin, but he's hurt, and that's just one guy, and he's a third or fourth liner at best. But the physicality of this team really has to change because they're getting beat. They're getting beat up. And I was a little disappointed after the Minnesota game when I watched Bally Sports to see Lalonde interviewed, and he just seemed like a defeated coach. Like he had no passion, no fire. I mean, I'm throwing chairs, I'm throwing stuff, I'm breaking water bottles and stuff after a loss like that. And his demeanor just doesn't say like, hey, I gotta, kick these guys in the ass. You see what Rick Tockett's doing in Vancouver. You see what Tortorella's doing in Philly. I need some fire. I need some passion, and I need him to start holding players accountable when they mess up. So I'm a little disappointed in Lalonde, and I know we'll get to talk to him later. But those are my two bads.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, we've talked about the goals against, and we've talked about the coaching last week as well, and it really needs to change. And they're starting to run out of runway. Really, I mean, you're starting to get. We're going to talk about that as well. So maybe I won't get too far ahead of ourselves here. But my good, I'll go to a good to start here, and that's Patrick Kane. He's been just on fire this last week or so. He's got he had a 3-point game again. Well, in the game we covered right after that, in that Philly game, the 3-point game, he has another 2 goals. He's on a 4-game goal streak. Scored against the Wild. Couldn't score this game, but that just finished. But he did just have 4 games in a row with goals. So he's looks like he's back to being the Patrick Kane that we all know, and maybe not back to how he was when he was dominating the league, but he still looks like he can score goals, which is great for the Red Wings. And like DeBrincat had a great game again this past one. So he looks like he's back, and that's great. And so that's my good is Patrick Kane. And then I don't want to harp on it anymore. My bad is goaltending and the defense. So I won't go too much more into that because we just keep repeating ourselves on that one. All right. Well, now that I've said that, we're going to repeat ourselves again and talk about the goaltending. The issues, they're still continuing. Alex Lyon was back in the net in this game, allowed 4 goals. We all know what's happened in the past with the goaltending. We're going to come back to this, and I'll start with you, Evan. Should they trade for a goalie? I mean, Alex Lyon is somewhat, I mean, he has kind of dropped off from what he started out as. And, should they, for the first question, should they? And if so, who would you be targeting? We've talked about a few of the goaltenders. Montreal is still going to be probably shopping theirs. The Sharks, maybe with Mackenzie Blackwood. Merzlikin's been talked about as well. Who would you be targeting if the Red Wings should be going for a goalie right now?
Well, don't throw anything at me when I say this because I was always a huge fan. I was going through Cap Friendly today at work and just looking at numbers and stuff. I've seen a bunch of people on Twitter like, "Oh, trade for John Gibson." That's not happening. The guy makes 6.4 for like the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So unless they want to take on a huge hefty contract, that won't happen. But I I'm really kind of sold and wonder what we could get Peter Mrazek back for. I think he's played a solid season this year. I mean, I could see Jake Allen as well. I don't know about Mackenzie Blackwood. I don't know if I'm on that train, but Peter Mrazek has quietly had a solid season this year. He really has. He's familiar with Detroit. I always liked him. I think he played on some bad Red Wings teams. He wasn't consistent, but he's better than anything we got right now, and I don't think you'd have to give up much for him. Gibson on the other, like I said, Gibson, no one's taking that without the contract. Jake Allen, I'd be interested in Jake Allen for a fourth or fifth round pick, and you could probably get that cheap. But is Jake Allen going to stop is he going to stop the bleeding? I don't know if that's a guy that you go on a run with. Jake Allen and Alex Lyon are your two goalies. I can't see them playing Reimer again I just can't. He can't stop anything. He actually played decent the first two periods of the Minnesota game, but then the flow, and it was just downhill from there. But like I said, I would give it a little shot at Peter Mrazek. Get him cheap, see what happens.
Yeah, he was once the goaltender of the future in Detroit. Jimmy Howard was the starter, and it was like Mrazek is the next one. And well, we all know what happened. He's not here anymore. But yeah, he's been okay in Chicago this year. And the thing is he's also playing behind a defense that's not very good in Chicago and has been pretty decent. So I guess he'd be used to a bad defense coming over. I don't know. But yeah, that's an option for sure.
Before we go any further, I have to tell you my Peter Mrazek story. So when my wife and I got married in 2015, she said, "You can take one picture of our wedding photos in a Red Wings jersey." And guess which jersey I chose? Peter Mrazek. And 2 years later, he was gone. So now I have these embarrassing wedding photos for like a guy who was considered a bust here. And yeah, so when you think you're having a bad day, just remember that.
Yeah, I mean, Mrazek is definitely someone I didn't really think about. I mean, Blackhawks are definitely going to be shopping probably him because I believe it's his last year on his contract. Yes, it is. And the thing is the Blackhawks aren't contending. They're towards bottom of the league. They'll be shopping guys for sure. Devin, I know you like Jake Allen, and you mentioned him before. Who would you be targeting if the Red Wings would go for a goalie?
You mentioned Jake Allen. Another guy that I kind of have my eye on is Karel Vejmelka over in Arizona. He's been another guy who's been really good behind some not really good teams in the past. Knows what it means to play behind a leaky defense. The only kind of thing that kind of gives me some pause with it is that bringing him in, I think you'd have a lot of the same question marks around him that you had with Ville Husso when you got him, and Alex Nedeljkovic when you got him. Yeah, it looks like he's good, but we don't know that he's good. That's kind of where Vejmelka's at, and the reason why he's even an option is because he's been outplayed in Arizona. He's looked good recently, but he kind of has lost his starter job, and that just kind of goes to show that he's looked good in the past, but maybe he's not as good as we thought. And is that an upgrade on what they have? To be honest with you, there's some options out there where it's maybe this could help for a little bit. Maybe this just adds depth. I think if they're really serious about fixing this goaltending situation, they either have to play the long game and just kind of wait it out and wait for a Sebastian Cossa or Trey Augustine to develop and become NHL goaltenders, or they have to really swing for the fences and be willing to pony up for a big name, big time goaltender. I know you mentioned John Gibson. I don't know if he's necessarily the one I have in mind, but that's the type of guy, or at least the type of profile that they should be after. I don't think he's on the market yet, but if UC Saros ends up becoming available, if Nashville makes him available, I think you gotta at least give them a call and see what the price would be, because they have picks, they have prospects. I think they could make it worth Nashville's while. And Saros isn't he's still in his 20s, so he's got some good hockey ahead of him. And then the other one would be Carter Hart over in Philadelphia. Another team that it looks good right now, but also is still kind of having an eye on the future. So you can kind of make a package of picks and prospects that might interest the Flyers and get them to move on from Hart. And he's 25 years old, so he has a lot of good hockey left in him. I guess my point is there's some guys that might help them out. And the key word there is might, right? And then you have to debate how much is too much for a guy that might help. If you're gonna get a guy that will help, it's gonna be costly. That's just kind of the fact of the matter. And it's just gonna come down to what they're comfortable with and whether or not it makes sense for them to make a move like that. I think their preference is for the guys they have to step up and perform up to where we expect them to be. But if all else fails, they're going to have to start making some phone calls. And for my money, I wouldn't necessarily bother with the bargain bin. I'd make a big swing and try to get a guy who can be a starter for the next 5 years.
Yeah, that Sorrow save tonight on Kane. Oh, did you see that?
Woo!
I was just sitting there thinking, like, God, I'm jealous, man. I wish we had a guy like that.
Yeah,
If I was Yzerman, as soon as he made that save, I would have walked over to wherever Barry Trotz would have been like, all right, let's talk.
There you go.
yeah. I think the Band-Aid solutions. I don't think that's the way to go. I think you try to go for a guy that's going to be here for a bit. Gibson's contract's too big. I don't think that's a solution. But Saros, if he becomes available, that is definitely a guy you throw all in on and try to get because he could be here for a long time.
And they still have Yaroslav Askarov in the back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't think the Predators are gonna, if they believe that Askarov is that goaltender of the future, they will be looking towards that at some point. And I think it'll be at a point where Saros is still a high value guy that you can get something substantial for. So yeah, they're definitely a team to watch coming up because, out of all the goaltenders that are available or somewhat, I don't know if there's anyone else I'd really go for. Got the New York Islanders. I mean, they're looking like they're back to but Varlamov, I don't know if he's a starter though. Again, is he the solution? So I mean, I don't know. I would go for Saros personally as well. That's if the Predators make him available. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, before we move on to the rest of our show here, I'm going to do our first off the rush, and we're going to go World Juniors. And because the World Juniors are well underway now, we got Sweden, they're 3-0, and the Red Wings have a few prospects there. The U.S., unfortunately, Augustine's sick. He's only played in one game so far. Played pretty well, but I believe it was against Norway, so it wasn't that big of a it was Norway. Yes, it was. It wasn't that big of a deal. But I'll start with you, Evan. Who have you been impressed with in the World Juniors early on here?
I mean, I thought Nate Danielson's looked okay. And the more I watch his game and the more I see the way he plays, like he feels like he could be maybe that Ryan O'Reilly type player that we could use, like that can move up and down the lineup, like second or third line. Yeah, he's had a couple goals and assists. I'm excited for his future. I know a lot of people are down on him thinking that he went too low in the draft, but if Yzerman's picking him that high, obviously he sees something, maybe something that we don't. So I like his makeup. I like his character. I like his work ethic. And I thought he played really well in the preseason. People were grumbling at the end, like, is he going to make the team? Mm-hmm. But no, I like his style of play. And I think his style of play is going to fit in well with this team when the time comes and he is ready.
Yeah, he's been really good on that. I believe he's playing on a third line for Canada and bit of a matchup role. So yeah, I think that's what his future is going to be, is like a Ryan O'Reilly. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to play all up and down your lineup even when he's older and be a very useful player for the Red Wings in the future. And Devin, I know you were watching for sure Axel Sandin-Pellikka. He hasn't had, I think he has only 1 point, but he's always noticeable out there. Who have you been impressed with so far?
Yeah, me. I love my Swedes, so of course I've been watching Team Sweden, and yeah, Sandin-Pellikka has been noticeable even when he's not making points, doing what he does best, just moving the puck, facilitating from the back end. And Anton Johansson, the other Johansson in the other A Johansson in the Red Wings system that also happens to be a defenseman. Uh, Plays very different from Albert, let me tell you. Um, just kind of a very stay-at-home, big-bodied guy that isn't afraid to leave a mark. Has kind of thrown his body around a little bit to start this tournament. And kind of a nice yin to Sandin-Pellikka's yang in terms of what they're doing on the ice. Sandin-Pellikka is obviously a lot of flash and high-end skill, whereas Johansson kind of reminds me of Gus Lindstrom with like a big edge to him, basically. And honestly, that's kind of a that's an exciting player if he can develop into a solid bottom pairing guy. But yeah, the Swedes, go figure.
Well, they are 3-0, so it's they haven't allowed a goal in the tournament yet. Shut out Canada today, 2-0. So, yeah, Sweden's living up to their billing of being the favorite to win gold in so far. But we'll just have to wait and see if that actually happens. But yeah, I'll go. I mean, I've been impressed with especially Sandin-Pellikka. Like I say, he's always noticeable, even though he's not putting up points. He's always moving his feet out there. He's always activating from the point. So I'm just excited. Swedes have been just really good so far. And of course, I'm watching too. The Canucks have 3 prospects on that team, and they've all been prominent so far. So yeah, the World Juniors are off to a good start for sure. All right. Well, before we move on to the second half of the show, we got to pay the bills and talk about the Substack, which we've revamped, but you can still get the great free version that get all the best articles of hockey writers, Red Wings, to your inbox 3 times a week. Also, the premium option, you can sign up and get a ton of different features, and not just from the Red Wings, but different categories from the other teams, prospects, history, hockey history, tons of fun stuff. So check that out in the link below. All right, well, let's move on to start talking about, the thing is, Red Wings aren't in the playoffs right now. They are actually 4 points out. No, 6. I think it's 6 points out of a playoff spot right now. And the wild card is held by the New Jersey Devils and the New York Islanders. And the Devils have 40 points. Red Wings have, I don't know if this is updated yet to this game. I don't know when they update these standings, but right now it says they're 6 points out. They could be 4 now, but they're not in the playoffs. That's the bottom line right now. I'll start with you, Evan. Will they be a playoff team this season? They're falling behind, not totally out of it for sure, but will they be? One game, or I'm not going to say, well, okay, they're not in the playoffs, but will they be?
Man, you remember like a month ago before that San Jose game, and we were talking about playoffs, we were talking about finishing at the top of the standings, and man, this past month, it's for me right now, it's really hard to be optimistic when you're seeing all these defensive breakdowns. Again, my thought could change if they can go on a streak here the next week or two, and if Yzerman does make a trade for a goalie, because we're seeing the same thing over and over every night. Our show's becoming the same thing over and over. We're just trying to figure out who else we can blame. But right now, I can honestly say I don't think it's a playoff team right now. I just don't think it. There's defensively, it's they almost gave up 40 shots again tonight. They're giving up way too many shots, and they're getting muscled. They're not winning puck battles on the boards. So it's hard for me to see that style, the style that we're playing right now, lasting until that long. I mean, even I saw something yesterday on Twitter about even if they went at the same pace that they went for the first 2 months from now on, they could still miss the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So they lost a lot of points here, a lot of points that I wish they had banked. And right now, I'm not optimistic. I'm not, and especially going into tonight's game. I mean, we were picking 10th in the draft lottery, and it's hard to be optimistic. I'm really hoping that they turn it around and there's some changes made, but it's hard to see them when they keep running the same thing out there.
I hit the refresh button. They're 2 points. They are now 2 points out of the wild card. 38 points, 2 games above 500. So again, not totally completely done. So Devin, will they be a playoff team this season?
Give us some optimism, man.
Well, I'm going to be a broken record because this is why I always pay attention to the Christmas benchmark instead of the Thanksgiving one. I think you just learn a lot more about a team in the months of December and January than you do in October and November. Because those are the dog days, right? It's especially January. We're in for a fun month. Starting next week, because that's when things we start to get past the halfway point. Playoffs start to come into focus, and just the overall schedule starts to beat down on some players, and that's where you start to see the lull kick in. So we're really starting to see what this team is made of, and we'll see if they have if like you said, Evan, we'll see if this win tonight was the beginning of a turnaround. But I think this team's just very, very streaky. Really, that's kind of all there is to it, because the first couple of weeks or so of the season, we're very, very excited, but very much thought that this team could be a factor in the playoffs, not just as a wild card team, but maybe in a divisional playoff spot. We were drinking all sorts of Kool-Aid back then.
Yeah.
And now here we are, and it's like Evan said, we're kind of talking about the same things week in and week out, because the same things keep happening week in and week out. The team can't defend; they keep allowing goals. It doesn't matter who's in goal; they keep allowing 3 goals or more. And the offense is great. Like that basically is your 2023-2024 Red Wings. And that means that some weeks they're going to be great, some weeks they're not, and we'll see how it evens out. I think that this is going to be a team that still is a factor. Up to the trade deadline, I think they'll still be very much in the playoff picture, and probably will still be in the playoff picture even after the trade deadline, depending on what direction they go. Um, but as it is right now, like I said, I put my money on the Christmas benchmark more than the Thanksgiving benchmark. They're not in the playoffs at this point. I don't think they're going to be in the playoffs. I think that there is better hockey ahead this season, not even just beyond this season, but this season. But man, there's just too much inconsistency and too much poor play from players that should know better for me to have confidence that this team's going to figure it out by the time that the games start to really matter.
Yeah, I mean, we were really optimistic talking at the Thanksgiving. I know for sure we were. But it's kind of fallen off the rails a bit. Like I say, not out of it by any means, but it's not looking good. Stuff that definitely has to change, both defensively, goaltending, systems wise, and all that. But we're just gonna have to wait and see, and hopefully they can be better. All right, and we'll continue this discussion and talking about the Yzerplan, which everyone believed in totally at the beginning of all this, but now we were halfway through Yzerman's 5th season, and that's hard to believe. This is only 5 seasons, almost 5 seasons of him as being GM of the Red Wings. Devin, what are your thoughts on the Yzerplan at this point? Are you still a believer, or are you starting to have some doubts?
I'm some combination of both, to be honest with you. I'm still a believer. I still trust Yzerman's judgment when it comes to players and how to construct teams. I still very much give him all the credit in the world for those Tampa Bay teams of the past. And I think that means something. And I also think, I still look at, where he started, what he inherited in 2019, and where they are today. And I think there's no question that the Red Wings are in better shape now than where they were when he got them. I think just based off of that, there's reasons to believe in the Yzerplan. But then, you see a guy like Edvinsson. He gets to play his 2 games in the NHL, and they send him right back to the AHL. At this point, I think you should be trying to figure out ways to get him time in the NHL, not just letting him sit in the AHL. We're seeing the word overripe pop up again in when we're talking about Red Wings prospects, and that was kind of what got Ken Holland chased out of town. So, what does that mean about Yzerman, right? And then it's not even just Edvinsson though. Like there's an over reliance on veterans, and not even good veterans that are making mistakes that rookies make. And I'd rather the rookies make them than the veterans. But that's going back to our conversations during the summer and whatnot. I think that Yzerman has gone a little crazy in free agency. I made my displeasure for not leaving room for rookies quite known over the summer. But you look at where the Red Wings are, and it's clear that a lot of those pieces he's added over the last couple of years are what have the Red Wings in a position to be a factor right now. There's really no way around that. Patrick Kane probably doesn't sign with the Red Wings if there aren't all these guys around that he's brought in. Um, I think that Yzerman's been a net positive for the Red Wings as a general manager. I don't think there's really any way to debate that. I think that's objectively true. The timeline is obviously kind of the thing here. Maybe you thought they'd be like a bona fide playoff team at this point. I think the fact of the matter is that the division they're in is really tough. The conference they're in is really tough. And they haven't been able to draft a Connor Bedard or anything like that. Really, they've had to take players. They've been forced to draft players that take time. And now, obviously, they're maybe taking a little too much time with them, and that's a whole other topic. But again, I think what it comes down to is the prospect pool is still deep as ever. A lot of promise there. They should be able to, inject youth into their lineup over the next decade, really. And they have good players in place now in the present. They're in a way better position than they were when he took over. And I think that at the end of the day, that's enough reason to believe in the Yzerplan. But the honeymoon phase is over. It's definitely not, all hail Yzerman and everything he does. We can definitely question some things because I think there's definitely some questionable things he's done. But yeah, I think the proof is in the pudding. He's clearly done at least a decent job, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he did inherit a pretty crazy cap situation they had to deal with. So yeah, but maybe give him some slack. But it is almost 5 seasons in. So Evan, I know you've voiced your opinion on the Yzerplan in the past. What do you think? Do you still believe in it?
Here's the thing with Yzerman is like he is such a beloved figure in Detroit sports history. It's hard for like anyone to doubt him. He was the captain. He was the guy that won all those cups with us, who persevered and changed his game, and everyone loved him, including the women. They loved him too. But you know, I'm glad he's here. I don't think he's going anywhere. He's had hits and misses.
Yeah.
People praise him for the Moritz Seider thing nonstop, but there's also been some misses in free agency. The Andrew Kopp deal, the Justin Hall deal, these other deals. But the good thing is he has kept them short term. So that's one thing I do appreciate about that. But I also think like he needs to address the roster and find a more physical game. We're not a very big team. We're actually a pretty small team when you look at it. Mm-hmm. And I know he's beefed up on the back end with the prospects and the deep guys that are coming up, but I think we need to get some physical forwards up front, and we got to start mashing. And this is kind of where I do miss Tyler Bertuzzi. Mm-hmm. Devin, I know we brought him up last week. Yeah, it just there's something's got to give, and of all people, I'd trust Steve Yzerman to make that evaluation. But again, we're 5 years in, and one thing that this doesn't get brought up much, but this is something that always sticks in the back of my head, is when the year we drafted Sebastian Cossa, we also had the opportunity to draft Jesper Wallstedt. Yeah. And I was very curious as to why Cossa was the pick over Wallstedt, because Wallstedt was really, really, really good. And he still looks like he's going to be the goalie of the future there in Minnesota eventually. But I think that was a miss too, and I think that might be a costly miss, especially when you consider that Kossa's struggling. Yeah, he's still young, and there's still a lot of time, but he's really struggling. And Trey Augustine might surpass him soon here as the number one goalie prospect. So I love Stevie Y, I always will. So I'm just not feeling it right now.
It's tough, especially with how many seasons it's been, and the rebuild as some, saying, oh, is it over? Is it not? I mean, it's kind of still in the middle. We're not sure. They got to start giving the prospects time in the NHL. And that's my biggest thing. And stop with the veterans. They got to start moving forward with the prospects. Change, next era has to start. So we'll see when that happens. Hopefully it's in next coming seasons, but I think Yzerman won't go anywhere either. He's here to stay for a bit, for sure. All right. Well, there's another episode of the Grind Line. Make sure to check out all our articles at hockeyrights.com, the Substack, lots of stuff there, and the World Juniors is still going. So, but until next time, we'll see you on another episode.
Hold on, guys. I thought of a new logo for us. It's the Broken Record Podcast. And don't forget, Devin, you also You got free curly fries tonight. So if you're fat by the end of the month, we'll know the wings are good. Had a good month, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Watch those curly fries. All right. See you guys.
We'll see you next time.